up, y'all? This is Dregs One. Welcome to another episode of the History of the Bay podcast. We got the whole crew in the building today, and this is going to be a special episode. This is going to be something different. Before I get into it, I just want to say when we cover our History of the Bay topics, we try to be as sensitive as possible when it comes to dealing with things that happen on the street, things that happen with the loss of life. As for us being fans, artists, on the outside looking in, we recognize that's different than being the friends and the family members of the people that are affected by street tragedy. But there's one in the Bay Area that has, affected people on a global scale, and that is the passing of Mac Dre. So today we're going to talk with our guest, Donald Morrison, author of the book Mac Dre, A Crime That Was Never Committed. How you doing, Donnie?
I'm doing very well, very well. Grateful to be here today.
Yeah, grateful to have you here too. You wrote a groundbreaking article in 2021 called Who Killed Mac Dre? And in addition to working on this book that basically profiles his entire life, you can get this out now through ZMash Media. Shout out to the folks at ZMash Media. Today we're actually supposed to do an event at Amoeba, but that got canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. So figured Donnie was in the Bay. We had already been in touch, and now here we are. So again, before I get into this story, I want to talk a little bit about our motivation here with putting this out there. And, right now there's a climate on the internet of people bringing street stuff onto the internet, onto YouTube. And a lot of times it's done for clout. A lot of times it's done for clicks. A lot of times it's done for fame. Our interest in talking about this story here is about the truth. It's about answers to something that happened that most people haven't been able to understand. It's been almost 20 years since Mac Dre passed. And without implicating certain people or, we're not here to advocate for the prison industrial complex or for law enforcement or for street vendettas or for any of that stuff, man. We're here to keep it respectful and just tell the story that a lot of people from around the world have wanted to know. And in my opinion, nobody has come closer to that than yourself, Donnie. So thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Before we get started into the whole Mac Dre story, how did you yourself get into journalism?
Yeah, I originally went back to school when I was 26 to be a fiction writer. I wanted to write about things that I'd experienced. I'm in recovery. I had a heroin meth addiction from basically age 15 to 23 and got sober in 2014. And
congrats.
That's what I originally wanted to write about. And then I went to a community college in Eugene, Oregon, and I volunteered for the school newspaper there. Ended up writing some stories in those first few weeks that kind of made me realize I didn't so much want to write about myself. I'd rather just use my experiences to tell other people's stories. And that's really where it all got started.
Right on, man. And what made you interested in the Mac Dre story?
I like to tell people, I'm from Portland, Oregon. Originally, my first concert that I ever went to, age 14, was Andre Nicotina and the Mob Figures at the Roseland Theater.
That's dope.
I've always been into Bay Area rap music in general. I remember going to Second Avenue Records in downtown Portland. Just growing up, going and learning about music, there was always a Bay Area mixtape section. I wonder if that still exists there today. But I've just always been. I think I was into Andre Nicotina before I was into Mac Dre because I'm 32. So I think I heard about Mac Dre probably 2 or 3 years after he had already passed.
Okay.
But yeah, and that's basically how I got to where I am today. I've always been a huge rap music fan.
Yeah, Portland has always been a big market for the Bay Area. There's always been a lot of support for Bay Area music, including my music. A lot of it comes from people from Portland. It's always been a tour destination. Nicotina has definitely been up there consistently.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, after Mac Dre had got out of prison, Nicotina was kind of bringing him on the road and kind of showing him how that game was working too. So that kind of makes sense that that's your entry point into it.
Yeah, definitely. There was always shows with Bay Area artists coming through. I mean, I think growing up, I saw Nicotina. I can't even tell you how many times with Equipto, and also Tech Nine for some reason always came through Portland.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the independent thing, is knowing those markets and knowing and hitting them consistently. So how did you get involved with this book, Mac Dre, A Crime That Was Never Committed?
Yes, this book, this book has been part of my life for the better part of a year. I got involved with this book basically because of the article I wrote in 2021. I think that it caught a lot of attention, and I was eventually contacted by the publisher, asked if I wanted to get involved with the project, and with Mac Wanda's involvement and everybody from Mac Dre's past having been interviewed, I jumped on the opportunities.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good book. There's I read it already. There's definitely a lot of stuff in here that I never knew, or stuff I did know about that I got a lot more detail on. So if you're interested, go check this out. You can find it. You can get it on Amazon and stuff, right?
Amazon and Barnes and Noble right now. And I like to tell people this is for the true Mac Dre heads. This is his story told through the voices of the people who knew him best. His mom, his high school friends, his partners in crime. And I think it's the most complete telling out there currently. So
that's what's up. And you can get it from our sponsor, Amoeba Music of San Francisco. So you mentioned the article, Who Killed Mac Dre? Very provocative headline, 2021. What was your process for writing that? Because it's not just like a quick little blog post. It's a very deep dive. It's a good example of investigative journalism. There's a lot of research, a lot of documents. So just walk us through, what made you even want to write it, and what was the process for getting that done?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this article has completely changed my life. It all started in 2020. I was getting set to graduate from the University of Oregon, and I had an internship with the Wall Street Journal lined up. And once the pandemic hit, that got pushed back. And so I was trying to figure out what I could do that summer, with all this time, me just graduating. And, being a lifelong Mac Dre fan, I remember I was camping with some friends, actually, and I had the thought of, like, I want to reach out to the Kansas City Police Department to, see if they have any files related to the death of Mac Dre, because it's always been, a mystery. Before my article came out, I don't think there was much written about it. I think the best I could find was a Reddit post from someone who had compiled all these rumors and theories about it. That's the best I could find about it, which is kind of crazy considering Mac Dre is such a huge name.
That is crazy.
And so I emailed the Kansas City Police Department. It was just one email in the FOIA format that I have, Freedom of Information Act. They got back to me in a week and said that they could give it to me for $114. They could give me the documents. A couple weeks later, they sent them to me in 10 different files, and it ended up being close to 2,000 pages of completely unredacted, everything from transcripts from interviews with suspects, photos from the crime scene, autopsy photos. Everything you could imagine. And you have to imagine I'm just getting out of college. When I got those, I read it all in one weekend, and I was going crazy. I didn't know exactly what I had, but it seemed like there was something there.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking crazy. But offline, we were talking about 1090 Jake, right? That's somebody who's been in the YouTube news a lot lately, and I've seen him do interviews where he talks about people like making all types of accusations. Like, how did he get this information? Is he the feds? And people don't realize, like, bro, if it's a public agency, government agency like a police department or a courthouse, typically these files are accessible to the public through, like you said, FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act.
It's a lot easier than people think. I mean, they make it more complicated than they need to, I think, to kind of dissuade people from doing it. But, you know, I could teach anyone here how to file one of these reports. Now, whether those government agencies actually respond to them is a different matter. You know, it really depends on what state. Like where I'm from, Oregon, we have really, really strict laws. Like, they don't release a lot of data like that. They constantly miss the deadlines for FOIA requests. Then there's states like Florida. They have the sunshine laws where, you know, I'm sure you guys have heard of Florida Man. Mm-hmm. And we get a lot of these stories because of Florida's sunshine laws where they have very, very easily accessible public information. So journalists can go and find the police reports from recent crimes and write quick stories about them. I'm not too familiar with Kansas City's. They definitely just, you know, forked over all these documents to me, maybe on accident, I kind of think. But maybe on purpose, who knows?
Yeah, why do you think maybe on accident?
Well, I think maybe on accident due to one thing that happened about a couple weeks after I got the documents. Somebody called my phone saying they were a Kansas City detective, and I wish I remembered their name. But they told me that the documents that I requested are available, and that I could get them for several $1,000s. I think he said like $3,000 or $4,000. And I told him that I had already actually received the documents. They're already in my possession. And he kind of just was like, well, if you want to talk further, you can give us a call back, and then hung up on me, which I thought it was very strange. And the story had not been published at this time. This was just a couple weeks after they'd given them to me. So kind of makes me think that they maybe gave them to me on accident.
Yeah, or maybe this detective was trying to just squeeze a few bucks out of you on the side. Hey, you want some more documents? It'll be $2,000. But, you know...
Great hustle.
Yeah, right. I mean, so what I imagine would happen, right, because it's like you make this request, it's not like it goes directly to the detective who worked on the case. It goes to a clerk.
Right.
Who works in an office. And it's just like, all right, yeah, you want these records? They might have no idea who Mac Dre was. They might not understand that this is a high-profile case. They're just like, okay, Hicks, Andre, okay, this is what you want? All right, cool, here you go. And maybe after the fact, it was like, hey, so by the way, somebody requested those documents that you had been working on, and maybe that's what happened.
Yeah, maybe they didn't recognize Andre Hicks as a name of any prominence. And
it's just another thing that flew on their desk. Like, all right, this guy, I got to get these files, this files, this files.
What's confusing is normally if the case is still open, that usually makes them the files confidential. So it's surprising that they would give them with the case still open.
And then, yeah, maybe that's the other... possibility that she suggested. Maybe they're like, here, like, let's just get this out there because nobody's asking about it. So let's, you know.
Yeah. I love that theory too, like a rogue records department.
Yeah.
It's just like the truth needs to be known.
Could be.
Yeah.
So you interviewed, did you interview the Kansas City detectives in the
Yeah, case? There was Everett Babcock. And the answer is no. And they denied all requests for comment. I tried to reach him many times, but luckily I did reach him once on his personal cell phone, which I found that number in the documents from 2006. So I'm glad this number never changed. But I caught him. He told me he didn't want to talk, but that that I had the documents, and that if you read the documents, you know what happened. And when he said that. I definitely, the hairs on my arms stood up. It was definitely a moment of like, I'm not crazy, and the answers are in here.
Yeah, this is some X-Files shit we're getting into here.
Definitely.
But you interviewed some of the people that are mentioned in the documents, who we'll get into.
Everybody later. Everybody I could. Probably over 30 people total.
And the only person I believe from the Bay Area rap community that you interviewed was Sleep Dank.
But Sleep Dank is the only person who would get back to me, and it's understandable. The Bay Area, you know, it's a very insular community. They don't want some white hip-hop journalists from Portland coming through asking questions about Mac Dre's death. You know, Mac Wanda didn't get back to me at first. I was grateful for Sleep Dank. It was, you know, I wanted more Bay Area voices in my story. It's the one thing that it really lacks. But I had no real credibility, and people didn't seem to want to talk to me about it.
Right on. Well, let's jump to Kansas City, where all this takes place. I don't think Kansas City is very often mentioned in the public spotlight nationally. I feel like you got to get a good sense of what the city is dealing with in terms of crime and homicides just through your investigation. So let's paint that picture of what Kansas City is dealing with when it comes to these kinds of issues and the police department.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially back in the early 2000s, Kansas City was often ranked as the murder capital of the entire nation. You know, one of the states with the most murders per capita in the whole country. And I think that still continues today. Sometimes it's other places, like could be, you know, places in Georgia or all sorts of different places. But Kansas City also has a predominantly white police force. They're policing a predominantly black population. And this just creates, you know, it creates a culture of distrust. The population, they don't trust the police to actually help them. And the police might not, you know, for the police's part, I don't think there's so many homicides when you're having 300 homicides or more a year. It's so hard to solve every single one of them. One thing that happens in Kansas City, there's a lot of cold cases. There's just not enough detectives to work all the murders. So some of them fall by the wayside. You know, if you're working 2 murders and then another 2 happen, you might have to stop those and go work on these. And then before you know it, you have all of these unsolved cases and a population who doesn't trust the police to serve any justice.
Right. So this is not the fact that Mac Dre's death has been unsolved for almost 20 years is not an isolated incident, basically.
Not an isolated incident in Kansas City, not an isolated incident in the rest of the country, and not an isolated incident when it comes to hip-hop artists being murdered, which, you know, especially today, and as it's always been, being a rapper in America is not a safe job.
Yeah.
Not a safe job at all.
And so, I mean, with Detective Babcock telling you, I almost said Detective Bad Cop, Detective Babcock telling you that this file speaks for itself, like, what is the reason that this case has not been closed?
That's a good question. I mean, we can speculate. You know, one of the reasons that I think the 2 shooters, the 2 people that were hired to shoot Mac Dre, allegedly hired to shoot Mac Dre, are both dead themselves. They died within. One of them died like 2 or 3 years after, and the other died.
Wait, let's get into that later.
But basically, yeah, I just think, you know, I think maybe the police have seen that justice has been served. There's no one really to put in jail over it necessarily, or they also, you know, nobody wanted to cooperate. People in Mac Dre's camp didn't want to cooperate. Fat Tone and the other rappers who were, you know, they were suspicious of immediately, they didn't want to cooperate. It was very much of like, we'll handle it on our own. So that mixed with the high murder rate and the police's probably racism and just not caring about rapper stuff, you know? I think it's a mix of all of that.
Sounds pretty plausible to me. So, I mean, this is also an interesting time to be talking about this because another thing in the news is the Keefe D. Tupac situation of a previously unsolved murdered. Finally, more than 20 years later, almost 30 years later, somebody's finally being charged with this homicide for Tupac. Again, it's another one of those like the worst kept secret type of things.
Yeah, if you really wanted to know who did it, the information was out there. And Keefe D had been doing interviews with Vlad TV and writing books about this for years.
Yeah.
So his arrest, it's an interesting timing. It's why did they do this now? Were they forced to? Did they come upon some kind of smoking gun or new evidence? We're just gonna have to see. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, me personally, I'm still not fully convinced that this is an open and shut case, and I don't know I can't say I believe his story or his version of events just yet. But we'll see how it plays out. I say that to say what we're about to go into is based on documentation that you received, your own investigation, interviews. But, what do they say? Men lie, numbers lie, men lie, women lie, numbers can be altered. You never really know. This is what we're about to get into. We're not saying anything in stone, right? At least not on camera, we aren't. And this is just basically the result of your findings.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. As an investigative journalist, I'm not from the Bay. I don't have boots on the ground here. I was just given a treasure trove of police documents and case files. I talked to over 30 people who were related to the incident and combed over these files over like 10 months. And this is what I found, and we put it out there. And I think a lot of people have found that this is one of the most plausible tales or plausible solutions to the story.
Okay, well, let's get into it. Let's paint the picture. 2004, Mac Dre had dropped Genie of the Lamp, Ronald Reagan, and then a third album, The Game Is Thick. I was in high school at this time. I mean, Mac Dre was on fire. Mac Dre was the hottest thing going. He was easily the most popular Bay Area rapper of this time. It just seemed like his momentum was going crazy. Interesting enough, there were rumors that he had died of like a pill overdose just a few weeks before this happened. And then he like popped up on Cameo or something like that. Like, nope, I'm still alive. And was doing interviews and everything seemed to be going good. So what brought him to Kansas City in October?
Yeah, I think Kansas City, like you mentioned earlier, Kansas City and the Bay have always shared a kind of mutual affection towards their rap scenes. Like, Bay Area artists could consistently sell out venues in Kansas City and in other, regional places too, like Portland, Seattle, Nevada. The Bay Area's music and Mac Dre's music connected with these areas a lot. And Kansas City was one of those. And so this was supposed to be a show 2 days before Halloween in 2004. And it wasn't just Mac Dre. It was Mac Dre, Yuckmouth, and Keek da Sneak. Those were the three artists, Bay Area artists on the bill who were sent to come out. And I think there was going to be some Kansas City artists opening for them. I'm not really sure. But yeah, it was a first time. This is according to the documents and what this person said to the police in their interview. There's a first-time concert promoter, a guy named Damon Whitmill. He's just a guy from Kansas City, from as far as I can tell. He wanted to throw a show. He even had a billboard put up. Or no, I apologize. I misspoke. He didn't have a billboard put up. He got the idea to be a rap promoter after he saw a billboard that was put up by a friend of his in the city. And so this show was supposed to be, those three artists. They were going to come out, do the show, be paid a certain amount of money, and that was supposed to be that. Do you want me to get into when he actually arrives?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So, and also I'll just bring up that from your article, it mentioned that the promoter set up a radio show appearance and a records in-store to promote the party as well for Mac Dre, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. In order to make sure his concert was successful and this show was going to be, financially fruitful for him.
Okay. Another person mentioned in your article is Savino Davila. So explain who that is. And you actually talked to him.
Yeah, many times.
So explain who that is and what his relationship was with Mac Dre.
Yeah, Savino, and this is a name that I'd never heard before in any of the other reporting about Mac Dre. I'm pretty sure my article is the first time they've ever been connected to each other, but basically Savino was what prosecutors said was the cocaine kingpin of Kansas City back in the day.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Well, he was convicted for it. So not exactly allegedly on this one, but his years that he was active, according to the prosecutors, were 2000 to 2006. Obviously, Mac Dre died in 2004. And by all accounts and what he told me, he was a huge fan of rap and hip-hop. He hung around studios in Kansas City. I think he knew Fat Tone. And he knew Mac Dre, and he knew these Bay Area guys. And when Mac Dre, they were apparently such good friends that when Mac Dre came to town this time, he loaned his van out to be like the chauffeur for Mac Dre and Keek the Sneak and Yuckmouth while they were here. And it was his cousin, Savino DeVille's cousin, Harold Piercy, who was tasked with kind of chauffeuring the rappers around while they were there that weekend. And so, yeah, basically Savino told me that he was friends with Mac Dre. They'd met multiple times. They hung out in the studio when they got there that weekend. I think he even told me that Mac Dre encouraged him to rap at one point.
Hmm. So the show was set for October 29th. Mac Dre touches down October 27th.
Right.
Walk us through what was happening between the show and his arrival.
Yeah, he arrives. They go to the hotels. There's a couple events set up to promote the show. One of those was a record store appearance. Mac Dre basically... so the record store appearance, he showed up late and with a bunch of people. The guy who owned the record store said that it was like a tornado coming through when everyone left, that the place was a mess.
And you interviewed the owner too, or that was in the documents?
It was in the documents.
Okay.
I didn't interview the owner, but the police did, and the transcript was in there.
Gotcha.
And one of the things he said was he regretted doing it at all. And then the second one was a radio appearance that Mac Dre was going to come on and promote the show, and he just flat out skipped that. He didn't go to it at all, according to the documents.
Did you get any idea, you speaking to Savino or any other research, like why he just blew those off, or what else? What was he doing instead? Like, was he just chilling? Was he partying? Was he recording?
I'm actually not sure what was going through his mind or what he was doing. I know he had friends there. If I were to guess, he probably was just busy doing other things. I know whenever I travel and go places, I always think I'm going to do more things than I end up doing. Yeah. It might have been one of those kind of cases. I don't imagine it was like malicious. I can't imagine Mac Dre being like, screw this guy. I'm not gonna.
Nah, it's like typical artist shit, man. Shit happens.
Shit happens. Yeah. Lunch went late or something. I don't know. Probably a stupid reason, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, so then now let's go to the actual concert that he was flown out there for at the National Guard Armory on October 29th. What happened there?
Yes, I believe the National Guard Armory is no longer there. It was there at the time, but I don't think it exists in Kansas City anymore.
It's kind of a weird name for a venue.
Yeah, very weird name for it. It was confusing when I was doing the reporting. But I know, from that show, I think I talked to DJ Fresh, who's a local Kansas City.
Not to be confused with the Bay Area producer.
World's
DJ.
freshest.
Yeah.
World's freshest. Right. DJ Fresh. DJ
so there's a local Kansas City DJ named DJ Fresh.
DJ Fresh, yes, not to be confused. And I did speak with him for my story, and he remembers that night. I know Damon Whitmill, that concert promoter, he had his family working at the door and working at concessions to lower costs to try to make his money. And this is all according to his interviews with the police, because the police talked to him a few times.
So he's stressing at this point, like, I got to make this money back. And
this is what he's saying.
Trying to do whatever he can to save and getting his friends to help him out and family. And
exactly.
Pressure's on, basically, at this point.
But it's also his first time ever doing this, so it's very disorganized. I get the sense that, he wasn't good at planning this. So it's like when we talk about Mac Dre missing certain events, it's like maybe he wasn't given the right information.
Good point.
Maybe he wasn't told he couldn't bring 20 people on stage. I mean, as a lifelong rap fan, the best shows are always when rappers bring all 20 people on stage, It's a funny move, but it's not uncommon.
Right.
And it's kind of surprising that, well, I guess I shouldn't get ahead of myself. Well, the show got shut down because Mac Dre brought so many people on stage. There was a fire hazard.
Didn't he also show up late as well?
And he showed up late. He ended up coming on like an hour after he was supposed to finish, if you can imagine that.
But Yuckmouth and Keek also performed.
Yes, Yuckmouth and Keek did perform, and it was Mac Dre that was going to headline. And he got there very, very late. I think the crowd was getting kind of upset, according to what Damon Whitmill said. And then when he did get there, it was just like there was a bunch of people on stage and it got shut down.
So it was just a mess, basically.
It was a mess, yeah. And so apparently Damon Whitmill lost money on the show due to this. And he told the police different things. He told the police at first that he lost money. And then he told the police, actually, we broke even. And then by the end of the interview, he said, no, we actually made a little bit of money. So, who knows what to believe here.
And this was a rumor that went around later, but based on your research, did Fat Tone show up at that show on the 29th?
No, I don't think Fat Tone was there that night, based on my research. And I think this rumor was proliferated for a very valid reason. DJ Fresh, that DJ told me that the night before, the night after the National Guard show, there was another show that Fat Tone was at and performed at and got kicked out at or something. There was some altercation where Fat Tone got kicked out of a show that Mac Dre wasn't a part of. And DJ Fresh says that the stories through history and time have gotten somehow merged to where the rumor was Mac Dre threw Fat Tone out of the show or said, wouldn't shout him out or something when he's on stage. Something like some disrespectful act. But I don't think he was there.
So for our listeners, a lot to keep up with, people. There's a lot of moving parts here. We're going to try to, again, you can also go still read this article. I should have mentioned that. Shout out to Passion of the Weiss. You can go look this up, follow along, look into it on your own. But just to summarize what we just said. So October 29th, Mac Dre has a show. He shows up late. It gets shut down. Doesn't go well. October 30th, Fat Tone has a show at the Atlantic Star, gets into an altercation, not with Mac Dre. Mac Dre is not present on this show on the 30th, and Fat Tone gets kicked out of the Atlantic Star show the following night after Dre's scheduled performance.
That's correct.
Okay. So you mentioned that the promoter had talked about losing money, so he ends up deciding to try to last minute throw a Halloween show That year, the 29th was a Friday, Halloween was Sunday. So Mac Dre, I think you also mentioned Yuck Mouth and Keek split. They bounced back to the Bay, and Mac Dre decided to stick around, correct?
Correct, yeah. And according to interviews that Yuck Mouth has given to, I believe, Vlad TV or another YouTube rapper interview series, he got paid half of his money for the show and decided to leave still and said, just wire me the other half. And him and Keek bounced back to the Bay Area. I believe that Saturday after that.
So the day after, basically.
The day after, yeah. But Mac Dre decided to stick around. And I think this was either because, he had a girlfriend there or girls that he saw there. He had friends there, perhaps Savino Davila being one of them. And at some point, Damon Whitmill tells the police that it was agreed that Mac Dre would try to help him recoup some of his losses from that show by doing a walkthrough on Halloween night at this other venue. And according to, different sources in the documents, when Mac Dre showed up, Damon Whitmill asked him to perform a few songs. The promoter asked him to perform.
So for those who don't know, a walkthrough is basically you get an appearance fee to just show up and be in the building.
Exactly.
A performance is an actual set on stage. A walkthrough is just like sometimes it's called hosting, sometimes a special invited guest. But basically, yeah, you're basically telling people, hey, come, you can party with this guy because he's going to be there.
Exactly, yeah. I think Mac Dre was going to walk through and get a VIP booth and party for a while. And at some point he was asked to perform, and Mac Dre was like, no, that wasn't part of the deal. I'm leaving right now. And he left the club.
So did he actually end up going into the club, or did he?
He did.
Okay.
He did. I believe, to my understanding, is he went into the club and was there, partying. And once he was asked to perform, he said no.
Okay.
He said, no, I'm not here. That's not my job.
That's not my job. And I think, did your article mention that, he was talking to Savino outside of the club at that night? Or he was mentioning, too, there was too many other local rappers performing or something? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, yeah. Savino said this to police in his interview, that Mac Dre was feeling uneasy there. That he wasn't, he didn't feel safe, that there was some weird energy in the air.
Got you. So he basically splits from the club. This is Halloween night. He splits from the club. He goes to grab something to eat, right?
Yeah, he goes to grab something to eat.
And Harold Piercy, Savino's cousin, is still driving him around in this van, right? This is his transportation?
Yes. And there's a limo with his friends also with him up until the place where they're eating at. And it's at where they're eating that Mac Dre says he's going to go back to his hotel, the Sheraton. And his friends are actually staying at a different hotel, a little bit of a shittier hotel. That wasn't the Sheraton. I can't remember what it is off top now. A couple miles down the road. But Mac Dre, yeah, he got into the van with Harold Piercy and was sleeping in the back. He was laying down vertical.
It was 2:30 in the morning, right?
It was 2:30 in the morning. They were headed back to the hotel. They were driving on Highway 71 in Kansas City. When a black Infiniti approaches the car from the driver's side and unloads, I think, just over 31 bullets from two different guns, one of them being an automatic, some kind of automatic rifle, and then another being, I think, just a handgun. I don't know too much about guns. There's two type of guns. One was an automatic, though. And Harold Piercy, he is driving. He wasn't hit. All the bullets were in the back of the van, not in the front. But he ends up crashing the car into a ditch. He goes if you can imagine a freeway, then there's the freeway, the middle, another freeway. He goes all the way through the middle median, all the way across the other freeway, and crashes into a ditch. At which point Mac Dre's body is thrown from the vehicle and lands in the muddy ditch. And he's been shot, I think 3 times, but one fatally in the back of the neck. And then there was bullet fragments in his ankle. So
kind of crazy that they specifically aimed towards the back of the van.
Yeah.
As if they knew that he was in the back of the van.
Sleeping back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were no bullet holes in the front. This is just a detail that's out there. I don't know what to make of it. But
No, yeah. We're just going through your findings. So the van crashes. Harold takes off at that point.
Harold takes off, and he says he tries to run up an embankment and notice headlights and thinks it's the same car about to go after him again. And so he switches directions and runs back to the hotel that Mac Dre's friends were staying at. And so at that point, the front desk person calls the police and reports that Mac Dre's friends grabbed some people from the rooms, probably some other friends that he was traveling with, and head back to the scene of the crime, where they meet with police.
Crazy.
And he was deceased by the time the police got there.
Rest in peace, Mac Dre, man.
Rest in peace, Mac Dre, absolutely.
So how did the police end up hearing that this car that pulled up on the side of the van was a black Infiniti?
So the black Infiniti was eventually found the next day. There were bullet holes. There were bullet holes in it on the inside, or you could see it on the outside, but the metal folded outwards.
So they were firing,
indicating that
through the door.
The door
from the inside.
Yeah, indicating that they'd been fired from inside
That's
the
some
car.
real cowboy shit right there.
Yeah, absolutely. From the back too. And so it was found, and there's a lot that I didn't include in the story just for length, just about the story of the black Infiniti and how it got to be used in this crime.
That is a long and confusing process as well.
It's long because it was stolen by basically 2 drug addicts, people with petty drug records. It was just stolen from a couple towns over, and then at some point it was sold to maybe a person nicknamed Papoose, who we might get into later. He's one of the suspected shooters, but we don't really know how that car got into the possession, other than it seems like it was just 2 junkies who stole a car and probably sold it to somebody else for money for drugs at some point.
And you mentioned that in the article that I believe there were signs of an impact, like ramming on the Infiniti. There was white paint that matched the paint of the van found on the Infiniti.
Yes, so, absolutely. So it's conclusive that car was the one used.
That was the car used in the homicide.
That's exactly right, and the paint marks matched up.
And you mentioned this guy nicknamed Papoose. How does this other guy, Elijah Taylor, play into the story of the black Infiniti?
Elijah Taylor, if I remember correctly, was the person, he was a jailhouse snitch who reported to police that he had seen Papoose driving the car, or had even, facilitated selling him the car at some point. And a lot of what we know about from these documents are from these jailhouse snitch transcripts that were in the documents. And just a quick word about jailhouse snitches. They can be incredibly unreliable people. These are desperate people trying to get out of jail, trying to use whatever knowledge they have to get themselves in a better position. Now that's not to say what they're saying isn't truthful, But it always has to be taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah, there's statements that haven't been verified for their truth because they haven't been placed on a witness stand and cross-examined and given the opportunity to either defend their statement or be proven false. So
that's a very good point. Yeah, none of this was used in a court of law, and a prosecutor could have maybe decided not to put these people on.
Yeah, some of them might not even have made good witnesses because of, like you said, the situation of just, I heard they're looking for him. Yeah, I saw him
just not credible.
Yeah. And then there's someone else named T-Baby who gets placed in the Infinity at one point or another.
Yes, yeah. T-Baby, Taryn T-Baby Smith, and then Papoose, his name is Calvert Antwine, but I guess we'll refer to them as Papoose and T-Baby from this point out. Yeah, they were both seen in the Infinity. And
Papoose was actually questioned about the Infinity, and he gave some statements.
He gave a statement. He laughed. He laughed at the detectives and said, "My name always gets brought up when anything bad happens around here." And it's funny, I can see why he would use this defense, because one of the most interesting details in the story and about him is, Papoose comes from Kansas City crime royalty. His father, who he's named after, Calvert Antwine Sr., he killed 2 drug dealers who were brothers in Kansas City in, I believe, the late 80s, maybe early 90s. He killed one of them, got arrested while looking for the other brother, and the police put the other brother and Calvert Antwine in the same holding cell, and Calvert Antwine Sr. just ended up killing that brother, stomping him to death in the holding cell, killed 2 people. And then his case, he got sentenced to life in prison. He got sentenced to death. And his case ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court because he argued that the prosecutor had used the threat of death penalty in front of the jury before he was allowed to, which kind of undid the whole case. So he ended up not facing the death penalty.
So that's Papooses' father.
That's Papooses' father. Sorry to not to be confusing, but one of the suspected shooters, his dad is a legendary criminal who.
Yeah, so we're getting into some serious shit here.
Yes.
This is beyond hip-hop at this point. There's some pretty serious street figures that are connected to this case in one way or another.
Yeah, we're talking about...
Allegedly.
Yeah, Savino Davila, alleged cocaine kingpin of the area. We got Calvert Antwine, who's associated with the 51st Street Crips. Same with Taryn T-Baby Smith. Some of the Jailhouse informants said that Damon Whitmill, the promoter, also had ties to street gangs and was a drug dealer in his own right. That can't be proved, and I'm not certain, but...
Yeah, we'll pick that up in a second. I want to go... because we kind of jumped around a little bit, the Black Infinity. This is stuff that comes to light much later. Mm-hmm. In the immediate aftermath, Fat Tone's name comes up. And we brought up earlier that... I'm really glad that we're talking about this, because that story that you just mentioned of Fat Tone having an altercation the night after, that's just like wrong place, wrong time. He basically gets thrown under the bus here. That altercation he had the night after Mac Dre's performance gets tied to, the wires get crossed, basically. And people start saying that him and Mac Dre had an altercation. I believe there was also a rumor saying that at the walkthrough, they had some altercation. There was also a rumor saying that Fat Tone was promoting the walkthrough event, which you didn't find any evidence of.
I didn't find any evidence of that.
And he wasn't even there, correct? On Halloween night?
He was not there that night, and there's also a rumor that he released a song saying, "I killed the Thizzle Man."
So that's what I wanted to bring up, because this is so we're talking before social media, but it's still the internet. And a big thing on social media is the message boards. And I remember, like, instantly people saying, "Fuck Fat Tone. He did the song saying, I fucked the Fizzled Man. I shot the Thizzle Van." This is like days after that people are claiming that this song is out there. I've never heard it.
I've never heard it. I've tried to find it so many times. You know, I can find a collaboration between them. They collaborated, but I can't find a single diss. But yeah, the message boards, Reddit to this day says this song exists, but I've never heard it.
Yeah, there's still people who are like angry at Fat Tone about this.
Yeah,
about saying that.
About saying this, but yeah, it's like, have you heard the song though?
But in the streets, Fat Tone was aware of this and was actually actively trying to clear his name. And our co-producer, our engineer DEO, actually has some firsthand knowledge of this that maybe he'd like to share.
Yo, we're reporting live out here in, not just playing. Yeah, man, this was, and it's going to sound crazy, but this was like top of 05. I want to say it was maybe March, late March, early April. And anybody familiar with me and like my early upcoming, we used to be downtown Market Street selling CDs and shit in front of Rasputin on Powell and all that. And we was on Powell, we was standing in front of Rasputin, and we hollering at everybody trying to sell CDs and shit. And I turned to this dude, heavy set. I didn't really look at him, but I was like, "Yo, here go my CD, check me out." And he was like, "Nah, I'm cool. But he didn't like walk off or nothing. He just stayed there, and it looked like he wanted to say something. So I still got my eye on him. You know, we head on the swivel and shit. But he was like, "Yeah, I'm Fat Tone." And I was like, we all stopped. We was like 4, 5 deep out there. We stopped. We looked at him like, yeah, because we was shocked because the rumors was already everywhere.
And he was by himself too?
He was by himself. And then we just staring at him, and then he was like, "Hey, is it true, man? Like, everybody out here think I killed Mac Dre?" And I'm like, "Bro, like, you talking to some young nigga. Like, we don't know nothing about that. We in Frisco right now. Like, that's some Vallejo shit." He was like, "Man, I came out here to clear my name. I'm looking for Kilo. I'm looking for all the Thiz niggas to holler at them. And, man, Dre was my homie." Like, he was kind of like pleading his case to us. Like, and then we were just like, "Bro, like, we don't know." It was before I knew any of them niggas. So I was like, "Bro, I don't know none of them niggas. Like, good luck, bro." Like, and then he walked in Rasputin trying to play it off or whatever. But we was shocked. We was talking about that for weeks. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then literally probably like 2-3 weeks later, shit, he ended up getting killed in Vegas.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm glad you shared that because that's pretty smart to even be like, "Look, I'm by myself. I'm out here. And I'm just, even these youngsters right here, I'm going to tell y'all even like, because these rumors is going around, so let me put it out there in the streets that I did not do this shit." And I don't think people were aware.
Yeah, and this is before the internet really, he couldn't like hit Kilo Kurt in a DM or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like information spread it a lot slower. So yeah, he flew all the way out here and to San Francisco, you know what I'm saying? And tried his best to clear his name.
It's a crazy story to hear because one of the things I say in my article is that, Fat Tone is a victim of clout chasing. I'd always assumed that when these rumors that he was involved in the murder came about, that he didn't really run from them because they were going to help his career as a gangster rapper. They were going to help him, sell records, bolster his image. But according to the documents, the police interviewed him, and he was always straight up with the police. He said he had nothing to do with it. He wasn't even there that night. And to hear that he might have, that he flew out here to clear his name, it's just tragic. It's just tragic what happened to Fat Tone.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like the Kansas City police had it in for him too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he was a well-known hoodlum to them. He'd served time over there. He'd been involved in murders over there before. And
He was like the Gucci Mane of Kansas City.
he was the Gucci Mane of Kansas City, yeah. If Gucci Mane also did domestic violence, too.
Oh, shit.
Those were cases that he had on his record and stuff?
Yeah, Fat Tone had a case against a pregnant girlfriend of his. Who
Right, that was in your article.
She passed away, yeah, and
He was investigated for her death.
yeah, and was even locked up for it for a little while, but was eventually acquitted.
Crazy shit, man.
Crazy shit, yeah.
So Fat Tone ends up running into, well, not running into, but he ends up linking with Mac Minister in Las Vegas. And
Yeah, the rumors, what I heard, it
allegedly,
yeah, that Fat Tone and his friend,
Cowboy, right?
Cowboy, yeah, something Walker, his last name is Walker, Jermaine Walker. They went to Las Vegas, or they were lured to Las Vegas under the guise of performing for Snoop Dogg. And I talked to a woman who says she was, Fat Tone's girlfriend at the time. She spoke with him while he was in Vegas. Apparently, he would always go to Vegas. He'd go there and gamble and do shows and stuff, and it wasn't that rare that he would go there to open for Snoop Dogg at this time. But suffice it to say, he'd never opened for Snoop Dogg, and he got there and was killed outside of the Vegas Strip, a couple miles in an underdeveloped housing development. It was
like a construction site or something.
It's like
right?
a construction site near a cul-de-sac. They were going to be building a big neighborhood there, and that's where him and his friend were found. And this was, 5 or 6 months after Mac Dre's murder? I don't remember the exact date.
It was May. I had pulled the article up.
Right, May. Yeah,
but
May.
he went to Vegas to get a verse.
To get a verse. So
it was to get a
wasn't...
verse from Snoop.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't to perform with Snoop.
Nah, it was to do a song with him.
Just to do a song.
Yeah.
Do you know if you ever spoke with Snoop?
No.
No.
No, yeah. Allegedly, that was the lure. That was the bait.
That was the bait, right.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother can of worms. I mean, basic. And then I was telling you offline, as this was happening, I'm like reading about it in the papers that, Mac Minister and his alleged accomplice end up on the run for this. They were on America's Most Wanted, right?
They were on America's Most Wanted, yeah. And actually, Mac Minister recorded the spoken word part of the opening to The Game's sophomore album, the documentary. One of my favorite The Game albums, honestly. But yeah, while he was on the run for these crimes, he was still out there recording music with some pretty famous rappers. And he also was accused, and sentenced for the murder of a young woman named Lee Danae Larson, who, by all accounts, I think he had pimped her out and was using her car and had used her car in the crime.
And the car was found burnt and with her in it, right?
Right. Yeah. And the reports are she drove him to Las Vegas and was a collaborator in that crime, perhaps unwittingly. I think maybe he was just manipulating her to use her car and stuff, but he then killed her and torched that car.
Allegedly. We're saying this because just again, in case you didn't see the beginning of this, neither Donnie or myself or our podcasts are here to, we're not here to bring justice upon anyone. We're not here to cast judgment on anyone. We're not here to state definitively that all this stuff happened as it was printed or even as the documents say. We are just exploring Donnie's work as the most in-depth coverage of this crazy-ass series of events. So don't get that twisted. Mac Minister has been fighting against an unjust conviction for these crimes, some of which looks like it has a lot of merit because it's based on a statement that was supposedly false and hidden by the prosecution. I think the most recent update is in February 2023. His latest motion for a writ of habeas corpus was denied. So he's still fighting this. So again, we are not stating this as like piling evidence against him. We are just reporting what Donnie has basically compiled here.
Yeah, and to his credit, he has always maintained his innocence from day one.
Yep.
He's been very vocal about this. He gives interviews to his lawyer that are then uploaded to YouTube that you can search out and listen to his side of the events.
So back to Fat Tone and what happened in Kansas City, as the Jacka infamously said on one of his songs. They say Fat Tone didn't kill Mac Dre. This kind of came out pretty soon after Fat Tone died. That like, oh, wait, hold on. That's not the true story. And in the meantime, we mentioned the Jailhouse informants. There's a lot more rumors circulating. And what are some of those rumors that start circulating in the aftermath of all this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at first, everyone thought it was Fat Tone. And the police, the records show the most tips that they got from random tip lines. I mean, a large majority of them were about Fat Tone. The streets really took this theory and spread it like wildfire. But the police, having interviewed Fat Tone and checked his alibi, they knew he didn't do it by mid-November. In mid-November, he'd already showed up to the police station and given his interview and everything. So in the following months, there were a couple different other rumors being thrown around. One of them was the Damon Whitmill, the concert promoter, having brought him out and, having basically put a hit out on Mac Dre and hired 2 local gang members to kill him for retribution for messing up his paper when it came to these shows.
And there are also rumors that he was the one making an effort to spread the rumors about Fat Tone too, correct?
Yes. This was another thing that some of the Jailhouse informants said to the police, was that they had heard Damon Whitmill in jail talking about spreading these Fat Tone rumors on purpose to confuse the police.
So we were talking of lineup. I mean, that is a pretty... a messed up concert is a pretty crazy reason to order a hit on somebody. So we can't state any of this definitively. I'm just sharing my 2 cents that is crazy. However, people have been killed for less, unfortunately. What we're dealing with here is like some real shit that happens, and I think it's important. Another reason for doing this podcast, I hope people realize, like, don't fuck around out here, man. Don't play with your life. Don't play with the wrong people. If you want to be in this rap shit, I'm not casting judgment on anybody. I'm saying, if you're an artist, just be an artist, man. Leave this shit alone, because this shit gets ugly and it's for the fucking birds, and ain't no fucking money out there worth your life or your soul or your freedom. That's what I would just want to insert at this point.
Yeah.
Let's get back to Savino Davila, who you interviewed, and years later, while he's facing charges, is when he starts telling his side of the story. Yeah.
So I got to know Savino just through, I found his sister's nail salon's Facebook page, and I messaged her, got her on the phone, and convinced her to, talk to Savino and put me on his...
Salute to you, bro. You doing a lot of fucking work, man,
this
behind
is investigative journalism.
Yeah.
Everyone has a Facebook. You can find people there. And she convinced me to put my name on his call list, because he was serving. He actually got out in 2021, but he was serving 30 years for crimes related to drug trafficking in Seagoville Penitentiary in Texas. He was there from 2006 or so, just until 2021, when he got compassionate release through the DARE Act, which congrats to Savino. We talked, for many hours. I was able to send him some books, and yeah, one note about Savino is he has a lot of different motives for telling his story, and what he told the police after he got arrested. He got arrested for crimes related to drug trafficking, and at one point before trial, he told the police, "I have information related to the murder, of Andre Hicks, of Mac Dre, and can there be anything done about my sentence if I tell you what happened?" And I believe it was in 2008. He finally goes in and does an interview with the detectives, and I have the transcript, I have the documents. It's printed out word for word, and he tells them a version of events that I believe is half true and half lies to try to make it so he's not guilty of anything. He's trying to tell the story but making himself look innocent to the police. And he eventually goes and kind of retracts all of this and says he doesn't want to be a snitch. He wants to just go and do his time. But his interview is still included in the record. And I was able to talk to him on the phone while he was in prison and corroborate what he said and get his response. But it's what makes this story very murky is, we're relying on narratives from people who have so many different motives. It's been so many years that the truth is kind of elusive. But we can definitely get into what he told me and to what I think is the truth based on what he told me, my own kind of, as the writer, as the journalist who read everything.
Yeah, we can summarize that.
Yeah, definitely. So basically what Savino says is, his big bombshell allegation is that he was there that night and he saw the shooting happen. He says he was following the van, which is apparently his van that he owns, and holding one of his good friends, Mac Dre, and his family member, Harold Piercy. He tells police that he was following it, he saw the shooting, and after he saw the shooting, he immediately got off the freeway and went home and went to sleep. That doesn't sound very true to me, especially if you saw your friend and your van being shot up. Would you immediately go home and go to sleep, even if you aren't a person who...
Yeah, and his cousin jumped out and ran. Yeah. And so, but what Savino says is Savino really puts forth this concert promoter theory, is that there was bad beef with the concert promoter Mac Dre over how Mac Dre handled all of those events that we talked about, and that Mac Dre was disrespectful to him at the walkthrough on Halloween night, and that it culminated in these two guys being paid to go and attack him and kill him. I don't know, why he told the police that he saw it when he was there. I think maybe he was just trying to add credibility to his story. But this is also one of those mysteries, one of those just things that doesn't add up. There's things, I'll be the first to say, there's things in my story, even though it is the best researched one, that just don't add up, And in talking to you, did Savino mention what was his motivation for even talking to you? What was his motivation in the first place besides, obviously, he was fighting a case? He mentioned that because he retracted his statement, he thinks that's why he got hit with 30 years.
Yeah.
But why was he so open to talking with you about this stuff?
This is a good question. I think Savino wanted, like someone who's in prison, he wanted to tell his story. He wanted to have someone to listen to his story. And even outside of the Mac Dre stuff, Savino's life story is very interesting. He's someone who I'd like to continue talking to and would maybe even write a book about. Fortunately, he's not talking to me right now. He hasn't talked to me really much since the article came out. But I just think he wanted someone to talk to, and I think he knows what happened, and it's like, I think he is mostly a good person who wants the family and people to know what happened and to know that it wasn't his fault. Having said that, I think he also feels a little bit guilty because I put forth, what I think happened was Damon Whitmill called Savina Davila to ask where Mac Dre was after he left the club to go get food. And Savina was like, oh yeah, he's with my cousin, taking him to the, maybe gave Mac Dre's location. Whether he knew he was setting Mac Dre up to get killed or not, I actually don't know. But I think Savino feels guilty, like maybe it was partially his fault. I mean, it was his van. Maybe he got that phone call, And so I think these were his motivations. But when I asked him, the big moment was me finally telling him, like, yo, I have this interview that you gave police where you said you were there. I talked to him for 10 months before I actually said this to him. I wanted him to trust me. And I had to tell him that I'm going to publish it, do you stand by the story? And all he would really say was, there's parts of that are true and there's parts of that are false, but I can't really tell you much more. So, yeah.
So this is another good point for me to also say again. I'm going to keep saying this. We are not here to make any definitive calls about what anybody did or didn't do. We are not here to cast judgment on anybody. We are here simply to just review the most thorough compilation of facts and documents about this case. And if it is true that Savino wanted to unburden himself or just help bring some type of resolution to the family, then I commend that no matter which avenue he chose to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So speaking of definitive answers, one reason that you mentioned very back in the beginning why we may never have a definitive answer is because T-Baby and Papoose, the two men that were allegedly in the Black Infinity that opened fire upon Mac Dre, those men both ended up getting murdered themselves.
Yeah, and I want to mention this. One of the biggest pieces of evidence that I found for this story, one of the moments where, the hairs on my arm stood up again was I did these public records requests and I found federal arrest records for Papoose and T-Baby in the months before Mac Dre's death, where they were arrested with automatic rifles and some ecstasy pills and I believe some other kind of drugs. But they were arrested with the exact kind of guns that were used in the killing, and they were together. And then that coupled with all the jailhouse snitches saying that they were in there bragging about the killings. They were in the jails and prisons bragging about them being the ones to do it. Kind of leads me to believe that they were the actual shooters. Whether they were paid by Damon Whitmill, I am more definitive on, I do think that they were the shooters. Now, T-Baby, he was killed, I believe,
sorry, let me just jump in real quick. Just to clarify, they were arrested with the same guns that were found in the ballistic reports before the murder?
They weren't the same guns that were necessarily used.
Same kind?
Same types of guns.
So what that infers is that they had access to those types of guns.
And were carrying them around.
And
they were
had used them
cars
before and were in stolen cars. And were they out on bail fighting that case at the time of his death? Or what was the result of them being arrested for those guns?
They must have been. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm getting my timeline mixed up. Maybe they were arrested afterwards, but weren't suspects yet, so they didn't connect them. But yes, I believe it happened before.
Okay. You can, everyone out there, you can verify this. So you got to forget this man. We're talking about an article he wrote 2 years ago.
They were just caught with the same kind of guns.
At one point or another, did go down.
Yes.
Okay. So you were saying something about T-Baby and what happened to him?
Yeah, he was killed 3 years later. It's still an unsolved crime. I personally don't think he was killed as retribution for Mac Dre. I think it might just be another street dispute.
I've seen interviews where people have said that the shooters have been killed. I haven't seen that street justice happen, or like karma. I haven't seen anybody saying like, taking responsibility for it.
Exactly. And I don't think, I think it's just like these people were gang members in the street and they, you reap what you sow type of thing. And then...
Yeah, typically people that are going out and doing crazy shit like this, is like there's multiple people that would have multiple reasons for wanting to see them gone.
It's not their first or last time shooting someone on the freeway like this. Yeah, well, and then with Calvert Antoine Papoose, he was killed like almost a decade later. In an incident eerily similar to Mac Dre's. He was killed in a car that crashed, and he ended up getting thrown from the car.
Crazy. So no definitive proof that those murders were retaliatory for Mac Dre.
Right.
No definitive proof that they were paid to do the homicide.
Right.
No definitive proof that they even committed the homicide, but pretty close based on the Kansas City Police's investigation and what was going around the prison rumor mill.
And yes, and based on what I believe as well.
Wow, man. Well, again, this is one of those things. It's like peeling an onion, man. It's like you peel off one layer and it just keeps getting deeper. I don't know if the world will ever have a full definitive answer to this, or Tupac, or Biggie. This is something that we got to look at in our society, man, that, what the fuck is going on with hip-hop? This is the only kind of music where this happens. You know what I mean? If Gwen Stefani is killed in a drive-by, there's going to be answers. If fucking Garth Brooks is fucking gunned down in a fucking parking lot somewhere, there's going to be some answers. But for whatever reason in our society, black men in hip-hop, it's just like, this is an all too common thing. And we don't get the answers. We don't get the resolutions. So I commend you, Donnie, for doing this work, for caring enough, for putting in the time, the energy. Anybody who disagrees or has their own version or whatever is welcome to take any of the steps that you just outlined and put their own work out there. But for right now, I'll just put this on record that you have dug into this more than anybody else in almost 20 years. So salute for that, bro.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I'm always open to talking about this and hearing new theories and one thing I want to end on as well as I think that there's more story to be told here. Like I think that more truth could be found. There were so many limitations for me writing this story and writing this book. Like I never once went to Kansas City and talked to people on the ground. I never once came to the Bay Area and talked to people on the ground here. That promoter, the concert promoter, I never once got a hold of him. He's still out there. Obviously, I don't wish any harm on him or anything. I just do, Mac Dre meant so much to me, so many, to you, to all of us here. And I think the fans and the people that love him deserve to know the truth. And I'll probably never stop trying to find out. And I'm hoping to do some kind of part 2 and really invest in this story further.
Yeah, there's just a couple more questions I wanted to ask you, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to follow up on the aftermath of the article, like, how did this, like we were saying earlier, maybe this didn't get enough eyes on it or it didn't create enough buzz. It's not like it was in Rolling Stone or in the New York Times, but it ended up on Passion of the Weiss. I've read a lot of cool stuff on that blog. How did that end up being the vehicle for your story?
Definitely, and shout out to Jeff Weiss. He's my favorite writer. He's probably the best working journalist, in the business right now. And Passion Weiss, it's been around since I think 2007, and it's really a home for these kind of stories and for covering the hip hop community in a way that just the mainstream media never has. I can't imagine the story anywhere else. I wasn't really, like I said, I just graduated college when I pitched this. I didn't have, I'd never been in Pitchfork yet. I hadn't been published in the LA Review of Books yet. I just messaged Jeff on Twitter and was like, I want to look into the Mac Dre story, and he said, go for it. And I'm glad that it ended up there because we were able to take liberties and actually publish people's names and really write a story that resonated with people.
Yeah, it's not like you had some editor that was kind of holding you back, right?
No, there was no, we didn't have like a legal team.
Right.
Right. We had 2 different lawyers look over the story to make sure that it was sourced right. No one can be, sue us. Everything is sourced to the documents, so.
What was the feedback to the article? What was the response? And did you get any feedback from Mac Dre's family or friends or anybody else that was involved in the actual story?
Yeah, the immediate feedback was incredible. The story blew up immediately. It kind of changed my life overnight, honestly. I'd say surprisingly the most hate that I got came from the Bay Area. Just people coming.
That ain't surprising. We invented the word player hater for a reason, man.
It was surprising to me at the time. I thought I was doing this great work. Obviously, I was. But there were people that were just like, you're an outsider. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'll be the first to say, I am an outsider. This is true, but everything goes back to these documents that I got and the interviews that I did.
The insiders ain't putting in that kind of groundwork, so
I really cared. I really cared. And of course, there's going to be limitations on me. I'm not from the Bay Area, and I didn't even hear about Mac Dre until after he passed. But this is how much he's meant to me, and one of the best days of my life. I say this with no hyperbole. Mac Dre's mom thanking me for writing this story on the phone. We finally connected on the phone probably about 4 or 5 months after I wrote it. And she was just like, thank you. I'd never heard, no one had ever bothered to tell me any of this information. I have a feeling she's probably kept in the dark by a lot of it just because it's sad and, why get bogged down by the details when your son was murdered. And
people don't realize, when you lose someone like this, closure helps. And having all these mysteries, especially such a high profile,
so many mystery
that can be hard to
it's very hard.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how she was going to react, because it's such a touchy subject, and I want to respect her and respect everything she's been through as well. But when she thanked me for it, it really validated all the work I did, and made me feel really good.
Nice. And I guess in closing, too, you mentioned this, that there are parallels between the Mac Dre story and Drakeo the Ruler, who you also knew, who you were. Well, do you want to talk just briefly about your relationship and your...
Yes, yeah. I wrote a story comparing Mac Dre and Drakeo the Ruler. I feel like their stories align in more ways than people think. Mac Dre, I believe, is the first artist to ever record lyrics through a jail phone.
Pretty sure, yeah.
We're pretty sure that that's the case.
There's another group out there called 5150 from Marin City. I am not sure on the timeline. I believe Mac Dre's was in 91 or 92. So I'm not that's the benchmark that I know of.
Okay, yeah. They were doing it right around the same time at the very least. And Mac Dre did it the best. And then this is also true for Drakeo the Ruler. And for people who don't know, Drakeo the Ruler is a Los Angeles rapper, came up around, 2016, 2017. Shoreline Mafia, 03 Greedo, the new LA kind of sound. And he went to jail. He was fighting 2 murders that he didn't commit, similar to Mac Dre, going to prison, rather.
Definitely law enforcement vendetta.
Yeah. And law enforcement used lyrics in both cases against Mac Dre and Drakeo the Ruler. But Drakeo the Ruler was killed in 2021, December 18th. I was there backstage with Jeff Weiss. He's the guy who does Passion of the Weiss.
Yeah, he's been instrumental in keeping He's been a big part in Draco's career and Greedo and some of these other LA guys.
Absolutely. We were there just to enjoy the show. It was the Once Upon a Time in LA festival. 50 Cent was there. YG was going to perform. Al Green was there. It was a big festival. And I was just kind of tagging along with Jeff to, walk Draco and the rest of his crew, the Sting team, to the stage when he was swarmed by I want to say 30 to 40 people in red sweatshirts and red, balaclavas. And they basically, they stabbed him to death while he was walking to the stage. And it was, one of the worst days of my life, obviously. And
what a nightmare. You're thinking you're going to have a great time.
Maybe the best day of my life.
Best day, and then, fuck, man.
To see one of your favorite rappers, too. I mean...
Yeah, see that happen to anybody, let alone somebody you have such admiration for and a personal relationship with.
Like a larger-than-life,
Yeah.
He was someone...
God damn.
And, much like Mac Dre, Drakeo the Ruler was making music that nobody else could have made. He had a very, very distinct style. He was fun. He was funny, just like Mac Dre was very funny. Just a true artist. And the scene in LA hasn't really, it hasn't really recovered from his death. I mean, Shoreline Mafia broke up. Draco was killed, and 03 Greedo went to prison. Luckily, he's out now. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. But that scene, that artistic renaissance was definitely it ended with Draco's death. And I want to say something similar happened with Mac Dre. It's just Thiz Entertainment, it never really recovered to what it was before his death, and it never reached that plateau that it could have.
The Bay Area. The Bay Area. We had the hyphy movement come after, but I've said this all the time. I salute E40 and Keek and Fab and everybody else who picked up the torch and ran with it and brought us on a global scale. I salute that. But Mac Dre, bro, if you were able to take Trill TV and put a version of that on MTV, he would have been bigger than Snoop. He would have been the biggest thing going. Can you imagine if he had social media? We just saw Mac Dre with a couple years in the camcorder, bro. If he has social media and the type of music he was making and the way, I've never seen anybody like this have a whole Northern California wave behind him. So, these are personal stories for us, even just as fans, as admirers. And definitely when you look at Draco and Stink Team and Ralphie and the buzz those guys have around them, I agree 100%. You see, people are really living by the music that these guys are making.
Definitely. And one thing I want to note, too, it's with Draco, he was killed at work.
Right.
While working, while going to the stage. And similar for Mac Dre, he was working.
He was there on business. He wasn't on vacation.
Absolutely. Yeah. He was there to do these shows and, was got his life taken in the process. And, it's hard to fathom an injustice like that. And it just happens over and over again. You even look at Pop Smoke.
Right.
Pop Smoke is a person in New York, very similar. Had a whole new style and was killed, way too early.
Yeah. I remember when Biggie and Pac died as a little kid, just mind blowing. And now it's every year, man. We could talk about the drug deaths and other, but murders, bro. Gun violence, stabbings, it's just out of control. And I, at first, to be honest, I was excited about doing this interview with you, but I was, there's hesitations in there because we're dealing with such as I'm sure you had hesitations in even writing the article. But now that we've come to the conclusion, I'm glad we did this, man. And I'm glad we're putting this out there because, the main thing I want people to take from this is don't fuck around, man. Don't fuck around and take somebody else's life. Don't play with your own life. move, learn from these stories, move how you gotta move. There's families, there's friends, there's people who love you. Don't play with your life to anybody who's out there dealing with street circumstances. And to anybody, we rap about this stuff, we listen to the music, but when it comes down to dealing with the realities of gun violence, I mean, it's just devastating. And me personally, I'm tired of dealing with it in my personal life, and I'm tired of dealing with it with my rap heroes. So, now that we've gotten to the bottom of this deep, dark tale, I think the light on the end of the tunnel is we're always going to pay tribute to Mac Dre. We're always going to pay tribute to Drakeo the Ruler, Tupac, Biggie, all the other fallen rap gods. And I'm glad that we did this, bro.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor, honestly.
Likewise. Honestly. I'm sure we'll continue to build and stay in touch. For the rest of y'all, I appreciate it. Let us know what you think, respectfully. I'm always open to any feedback about my content or my work. The team is working hard, and we appreciate y'all for watching this, and we hope that it has a positive impact on the world. Rest in peace, Mac Dre. Go grab the book, A Crime That Was Never Committed, and we'll see y'all on the next episode. Peace.
Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California is a West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay. Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California is a West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay.